Get this. I guess we can. You guys at home get to watch the Pledge of Allegiance, see who's patriotic, or just, who's standing up and has a voice. Okay. So, for your information, and this actually applies to you guys in here, not so much the at-home, because the at-home for quizzes and tests and things like that, they have different assessments, which are, very, I would say, very doable. Some of you guys might say it's a little bit harder because, somebody could come into my class for a quiz or assessment or test not having studied at all or done any preparatory work or even read the chapter and just wing it. Whereas the at-home alternative, you have to actually produce something. So, look on the board here, 11th grade. This so-called retake for Chapter 27. I put a due date on that. I've already told you what you need to do. By Friday of next week, some people have already done it. They've turned in things for this class or the other classes. It's the 10% retake make-up point opportunity. You got it in already, so you're good to go. But I wanted to have a due date on it, so I just knew that people were going to get that in. What do you have to do for the study guide? Mia, what do you have to do? Exactly, the thingies to the thing. So 2 sentences at least for each of the different items in the study guide. And that'll get you those 2 points. The only people who that would not be available to would be if you got a perfect score, and there were some, or you could only get 1 point if you only got like 1 point off on the quiz. Okay, does that make sense? Do you understand? No, but actually, reminder, I think I've talked to you guys about this. Is there an extra credit opportunity coming up? Haley? Is there an extra credit opportunity coming up? I'll give you a really big clue. Like right before the election. And what is it? I think I did say this because Danton's acting like he knows what I'm talking about. Go ahead. It actually is. You're going to be predicting all the outcomes of all the different states as far as like who is going to be the winner in various different states. Austin's like, Trump wins in Idaho. Are you going to say that about California? No. Okay. So, as it works out, ladies and gentlemen, as it works out, whoever gets 270 or more electoral votes will be the winner. Okay. So, it does help to win some big states. If you just win little states, that's not going to be good enough. But as it turns out, there's little states that are like Republican and little states that are Democrat and vice versa for the big states. Although for the big states, probably the biggest one that tends to be like Republican almost all the time is Texas, right? Yeah. So, but there's other big states that went for Trump last time. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Florida. Trump won all of those critical swing states last time, and they're all in play again this time around. Okay, update. Concern for the president and first lady. They announced pretty late last night that they had tested positive for COVID, but they say, and their doctor says that they're well, so they're asymptomatic, I guess is what you would say. So anyway, that's what's going on there. Questions, comments? I don't think they got close enough in the debate. And you never know exactly when it was. The debate was what, Monday night? We already talked about the debate. I don't want to talk about the debate anymore. Also, Cole, what do you have to get ready for next week? How many points is it? How many questions is it? Do you have the material? Are you going to do okay? Raise your hand if you think you're going to pass. Raise your hand if you think you're going to get them all right. Raise your hand if you're going to get at least 90%. I would think you guys should be able to. You can do it. It's right there in front. Take some time. Okay? Questions? All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Your country awaits you. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. You just say it how you want to say it. Do you do it in, like, you do it in English, right? Yeah, because I know, like, in some class, like Spanish class, sometimes they would have the students do it in Spanish, you know, which is kind of an interesting scenario. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Chop, chop. Chop, chop. Got your notes? All right, here we go. All right, and you're welcome to stand, Mia, but you do have to focus on the instructional purposes that we are doing here, okay, as well as take notes, because that's going to help you. All right, here we go. Where last we left off, we were talking about the situation in China. Just to wrap up there, as a reminder, did the Chinese government want to encourage Chinese citizens to rebel against the overwhelming outside influence of countries like Japan and Britain and Russia and Germany? Did the Chinese government want their people to rebel? You're like, what? You're jumping into this way too fast, Mr. Hansen. Yeah. Yes. All right, let's back it up a little bit. Make sure we turn this on. There we go. So there was a Boxer Rebellion. These were Chinese people who were very much into the martial arts. Hence, they were referred to as boxers. They hated the so-called foreign devil. They wanted him out. And so they attacked. Austin, do you remember? Did the Chinese government support these Chinese super patriots who were like, we want to have China responsible for China instead of, like this map right here, have all of these outside influences, you know, basically bossing the Chinese around in their own country? Why didn't the Chinese government support the rebellion? Didn't they want the same objective? Didn't the Chinese government want China to be in charge of China? So this is actually an important question. So why didn't, write that down if you don't have it already, why didn't the Chinese government support the Boxer Rebellion? Anybody? Well, let me ask you this question. Did the Boxer Rebellion succeed or fail? As they look at the slide that says it fails. It failed. Okay? Aiden, why did it fail? That's a pretty fair response, yeah. I mean, so you've got these boxers that are like, I mean, what did they think they were going to do? How did they think the battle was going to turn out? Remember that part? Amazingly, like, what did they think was going to happen? They're on one side. Let's say you've got British or French or German or Japanese or Russian. Oh, I can see this is going to be a problem. All on the other side. And Aiden, what weapons do you suppose the outsiders are going to have? Like guns, yeah. And what are the martial artists, the Chinese, going to have? You don't remember that? I did tell you that. They had no armor, but they felt as though what they were wearing was bulletproof, exactly. Remember that? Spiritually superior. Yeah, no, it's like that'll go right by him or bounce off. And didn't happen. Yeah, so the boxers were put down. So, back to the question, Austin. Why didn't the Chinese government support these guys? Exactly. They knew they were going to fail. And they also kind of sensed, and they were right, that if there was a rebellion taking place, who was ultimately going to suffer besides the rebels who were killed? Answer, the Chinese government. Who had to pay? What was the amount of money that the Chinese government had to, excuse me, I guess there's the answer. What was the amount of money that had to be paid to the winning forces? It was one more digit on top of that. 333 million. That's kind of a weird number. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair amount of money. $333 million. You got that? So who had to pay that? The Chinese government. And they can go, we didn't support the rebellion. It wasn't us trying to do this. We knew, because the Chinese government had fought against the British earlier and others earlier in the 1800s and lost. So they're like, we don't want to have anything to do with this. Did I tell you a story about the stone boat? I've told that to some classes. The first trip that I went with students when I was teaching at Capitol in the year 2000, first overseas trip, went to China. And one of the places we went to, I believe it was outside Beijing, capital city, It was like an imperial palace complex. And there was a beautiful lake. And in the lake there was a very strange structure. It was a boat made out of stone. And a little bridge went over to the boat made out of stone. And you're like, what the heck is somebody doing with a boat made out of stone? Because it wasn't floating. It was in the water. Well, the story was, during the Boxer Rebellion, the Chinese were insisting that the Empress Dowager, who was in charge of the country, build a navy to fight against, the British and so forth. You need to have that. And she's like, if I build it, they're going to see that as threatening, and they're going to attack us. So she took the money that was given to her, and she built a stone boat for her palace lake. This is like, you wonder like why China is very assertive in the world today. Part of the answer is they have the ability now, one, to be more assertive in the world, and they look back on their past, and they remember when they weren't able to do that, and they're like, no, 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 we're not in that position anymore. We are stronger economically. We can afford a strong, up-to-date military. Back in those days, no, they couldn't. They couldn't. I mean, I suppose the only nice thing that sort of came out with this, and this was the last thing we talked about, was what did the United States do with a big chunk of our share? We got, $24.5 million. Cole, do you remember? What did the United States dedicate 18 million of that? So a big chunk of that, what did we put it toward? You remember? Toward a special program that actually involved the Chinese people. Students. Okay, yeah, go ahead. If you didn't write that down already, that was like right toward the end of the notes last time. It was, yeah, it's okay. Some of you guys were already packing up. You're like, okay, he can't be important if he's still talking because his class is almost over. Anyway, so $18 million the United States remits or sets aside, so that will be spent for Chinese students to come over to the United States to study. Let's point something out. And this is actually kind of interesting. I'm going to dwell on this a little bit because it affects you guys. Listen very carefully. And yeah, that's one of the issues. That's one of the ramifications of having people come into your country because they want to learn, and sometimes they really want to learn what's going on. Okay? You're like, I'm just an American exchange student. I mean, remember Peter the Great? He's like, I'm just a Russian exchange student come to the Netherlands to learn about shipbuilding and so forth. Whatever, you're not incognito. We know who you are. Fine, learn all you want. Take it back to Russia and build port facilities and shipbuilding facilities and so forth. But put this in your head. You don't have to put it in your notes. The United States today is one of, if not the, best places for people around the world to get a university education. We have, no, listen. We have top quality universities, and the reason I can say that and support that is because so many people, maybe not so much this year because of COVID, but so many people have come to the United States to get a university education. And then they go back to their home countries and use that university education in lines of work in their home countries. What does it take for those people, and a lot of them come from China, what does it take for them to come over to the United States to get an education? What kind of permission do they need? Anybody know? Well, basically a student visa, yeah. And a student visa, can you stay in the United States longer after your student visa expires and you're finished your education? No, you would need like a special permission. I know there's a number of employers, particularly in this area like Micron and so forth, that they're like, well, we need to hire people from other countries. So they have to get different kinds of visas to get permission for those folks to come in. But I'll tell you what, you guys, let me see. You're going to be the senior next year. So college year after. This is one of the weird ramifications of COVID and not as many, hardly any, foreign students coming into the country this year. Some of those universities relied a great deal on the tuition of foreign students coming to their universities. I want to say some of the universities, it's as much as 10% or more of their student body population were overseas students. That's not happening right now. So universities are looking at their budgets and they're going, uh-oh, we've got all of these programs that we have and professors and so forth, but not as many students. In addition to other students like yourself who are like 2 years older who are going, I don't want to take online courses and pay, $30,000, $40,000 a year for tuition. You know what I'm saying? Or you sit in a dorm or whatever, just doing online courses. I mean, if you're going to pay that much money, you want like the whole university experience and face-to-face with professors and things like that. So some students, like your age, a little bit older, are putting off their college. Have you heard that? Yeah. So what this does is create some challenges for the universities because they've got their budgets to balance. When you're doing your research, here's the tip for you. When you're doing your research, be very aware of this because universities are cutting budgets. Be very aware of like what you want to study at a university because it has happened already in the past. I mean, this happens. Let's say you're majoring in something and halfway through your 4 years or whatever at college, they do cutbacks and they get rid of your major. Where does that leave you? Can you finish your major at that college? Nope, because they don't offer that major anymore. I mean, sometimes they try and transition it. So like they're, oh, well, you're going into your junior year, we'll do it 2 more years. Yay! Sucks for all the people behind you. Otherwise, students have to change their major or transfer to another college, which is always a hassle, because that other college may or may not accept your things. And if you're interested, I mean, these are the realities, right? I mean, I know Boise State this year is cutting back. They've had to because not as many students coming in, and they cut certain athletic programs, for example, the baseball team and some of the other athletic programs. So just be aware of that. I don't know if any of you guys are anticipating getting athletic scholarships and so forth, but if you want to get like a golf team and so forth, you better make sure that they're going to keep that golf program while you're there. Otherwise, if it goes away, These are weird, different considerations that you have to look at, whereas North Star students, older siblings, 4 or 5 years and so forth ago before, it wasn't part of the thing. So just be aware of that. And part of it is this unique thing, going back to the United States has great educational institutions to offer university education, and it goes all the way back to the days where we were essentially paying for Chinese students to come to the United States to learn. What benefit was there? Actually, a lot of benefit. Lots of overlap and cultural connections and so forth. A lot of positive things going on between countries. Although, if you're sent over to this country and your objective is to spy on the United States of America, maybe not so much as a student, but as maybe a visiting professor and so forth, you could get into trouble. Dan was referring to some news stories where federal authorities are prosecuting some people from China who came over and accessed things they weren't supposed to and shared it with the Chinese government because, I mean, this is the way it is. We'll get to this later on, next semester. Which country was the first one to invent and successfully detonate an atomic weapon? Russia. Us. Did the Soviets want it? Yes. What are they going to do to get it? Two things. They're going to really focus on the science, and they did a lot of work focusing on the science. And the other part is to try and spy and get information. They did both together within, I want to say, within about 3 years, not much more than that. I have to double check the notes. They had developed nuclear weapons because that was what they wanted. They didn't want the United States having it, and they didn't have it. Same thing, with all these various different technologies. If it's like, and China knows this today. What kind of technology and money did they have available back in the late 1800s, early 1900s? Like nothing. Nothing that they needed to really defend themselves. Okay? Questions, comments? Hope I didn't depress you or anything about that. But I'm going to go to college and it's just going to be great, just like it has been for everybody else. It'll be different. Yeah, and I have heard from some freshmen, they're like, it's not the way I thought it was going to be. If you're in a dorm, you're kind of stuck. Or, you're like, I want to have a fun social experience. It's kind of hard to do that in the age of COVID. Party time, yeah, right. Have a Zoom party. Woo! No. All right. Okay, let's analyze this poster. All right, ready? The next topic that kind of flows right from this. Presidential election, the first presidential election after the Spanish-American War was in 1900, okay? You had the President of the United States, William McKinley, Republican, running for re-election. And he actually, surprise, surprise, not surprise, he won easily, okay? He beat, let me see, let's find this guy. William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan, the Democrat who ran for president a number of times and was their nominee 4 times. Did he make my wall? No, because he was never elected. He ran in 1900 against William McKinley, but McKinley had the advantage. So let's look at this and see what kinds of things were going on that helped William McKinley win re-election for a 2nd term. And who knows, maybe he could have gone for a 3rd term. Had any president gone for a 3rd term up until the time of William McKinley? No. Could they have? Yes, they could have. They could have. We covered this last year. President Washington, everyone listens to President Washington. President Washington says nobody should serve more than 2 terms. Okay, we'll take that as like that was constitutional script. Well, it wasn't in the Constitution. Yes, they did. I'll tell you. Let's see if you can guess. And you can look, if you can read really carefully at the numbers, who was the first and only president who was elected to a 3rd and then a 4th term? It was Franklin D. Roosevelt. Very good. It was Teddy Roosevelt's cousin. Yeah, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Elected in 32, 36, 40, and 44. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, his response was, the country needs me, I'm willing to do it. Right? 1940, World War II had begun, and even though we weren't in it, it was like, let's not change presidents, and he agrees, and the country reelects him. By 44, we're in World War II. And he's like, let's not change presidents, the country needs me, I'm willing to do it. He gets elected, but then he dies. Okay? And his vice president takes over. And this is actually important. Yeah, actually, this is very important, because now we look at Harry Truman. Anybody know who the... Franklin D. Roosevelt had 2 previous vice presidents. One of them was vice president for 8 years. He hated the job. He said it was so useless, it was like a warm bucket of spit. Only he didn't say spit. He said something else that comes out of a human body that collects it is really not too pleasant. He thought that was a stupid job. Remember, what is the only power of a vice president? The Supreme Court. What? Yeah. Does he get a vote in the Senate that he presides over that really doesn't have much power over, like, who gets to talk when, where, and so forth? Remember that? Does he get a vote? When's the only time he gets to vote? He does get a vote. There's a tie. Yeah, that's it. That's the only official responsibility for a vice president. It's kind of a dud job. And Franklin D. Roosevelt was like, oh, you don't want to do it anymore? Okay, fine, I'll find somebody else. He found somebody else for his 3rd term. And then after that, he's like, I'm going to move on to somebody else. And he moved on to Harry Truman. We would have never known Harry Truman, probably, in history, as much as we do now, unless Franklin D. Roosevelt died. Got that? Well, let me tell you about this. Listen carefully. First, let's look at McKinley. He's running for re-election. Write this down. He's running for re-election, and in his poster, here we go. The administration's promises have been kept. And he's got some images on there. It's kind of hard to look and see, but he's got, like, factories. And here, this is weird. Like, here you've got factories with no polluting smoke coming out of the chimney stacks. And in this poster, that's bad. In this poster, we see lots of polluting chimney smoke coming out of the factories. And that's good. Why is that good? This is before like the environmental sensibilities have really kicked in. A factory going full steam literally means people are at work. So you can write that down. McKinley was saying the economy is doing well. Yay me, yay America, vote me in again. It is weird when you see something like that. That's very that's in the late 1800s, that's 1900. Things are going well when you've got smoke coming out of the chimney. It's a sign that things are going well. Nowadays, it's a sign that, they need to have, filters and so forth put on those chimney stacks. Here's another thing that he points out. So, check the box. The economy is good. By the way, how is the economic issue relative to President Trump? Is the economy going well? How's he playing that? It's a tough one, right? Because if the economy's not going as well as it was, say, a year ago, what is the reason? You're going Trump. It's Trump's fault, right? It's the virus. Although other people are going, it's the virus as Trump handled. And it's like, okay, whatever. And Trump's campaign, if you ever get a chance to watch any of his commercials, he's like, you know, to the extent the economy's not doing very well, it's not my fault. But the things that I had put in place, Trump is saying this, it's doing well, and it will come back again. Economy is always very important, but write this down as well. War is also an important issue. Okay? So is a positive experience in war going to help you get reelected? What do you think, Mia? If we win the war, is that going to help McKinley? What if we lost the war? Is that going to, would that help him? No. I mean, if you go back to like Abraham Lincoln, he got reelected to a second term in 1864 after victories in Gettysburg and in the Deep South, and people in the North were like, we're winning this. Let's keep him on. But those military victories, you have to be careful. Take a look, number 41, George H.W. Bush. He was elected in 1988, ran for re-election in 1992. In early 1991, just within 2 years of his re-election effort, the United States won a huge victory over Iraq in the Persian Gulf War. Iraq had invaded Kuwait. We got together a coalition. We sent in the military, and we beat them quickly. And Bush's popularity soared. I mean, he had like 80-some% approval rate. And yet, the next year, in November 1992, he lost. What do you suppose the reason for his defeat was? If he had a military victory the previous year, what do you suppose was maybe not going so well for him in the country at that time that helped him to be defeated? And I've already mentioned it. The economy. The economy. If people are out of jobs and so forth, then they look and they go, must be your fault, Mr. President, and bring in the next guy. Okay? So this is interesting. Let's take a look at how McKinley describes the Spanish-American War. Look at this. You can't really quite read this, but I'll read it for you. The American flag has not been planted in foreign soil to acquire more territory, but for humanity's sake. Okay, now listen very carefully. Let's see if you can unpack that a little bit. Has the American flag been planted in any territory during McKinley's administration, his first 4 years? Yes. What 4 territories? Which ones, Tessa? What are the 4 territories the United States wrested away from Spain? Rhymes with mom? Guam, there we go. Okay. Now, one of those, Tessa, which one of those did we pretty quickly pull the flag back out and go, okay, you guys can have it? Not the Philippines, no. We were in the Philippines until after World War II. It was Cuba, okay? So, question then. We have our flag in 3 territories, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Did we do that for more territory? Was that the motivation? Depends on who you ask. McKinley's saying that's not my motivation, even though it actually happened. I'm motivated for humanity's sake, to take care of those Filipinos and Puerto Ricans and Guami, I don't know, what do you call somebody who lives in Guam? People who live in Guam, anyway. Yeah. Yeah, we need, I don't actually know. But it was for humanity's sake, to save them from the dreaded Spanish la 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 la. Got that? So, nevertheless, works. He's reelected. Question. Write this down. He switched vice presidents. In fact, to be honest, and I suppose I could look it up, but it's like, who was his vice president during the first term? I don't know. It's not going to be on the test. Who was his vice president running in 1900? It is on the test. It's right here. Do you recognize him?
No.
It's Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, write it down. Teddy Roosevelt became the vice presidential nominee of the Republicans in 1900. And there's an interesting story behind it. Listen very carefully. We've already talked about Teddy Roosevelt. Okay? Young, ambitious, definitely in favor of big empire and so forth. Had he made a name for himself during the Spanish-American War? Oh, heck yeah, yeah. Good, positive publicity. His role as the leader of the Rough Riders. Fought the Battle of San Juan Hill. He takes that to a political victory. Write this down. Not in 1900, but later in, I want to say, in 1898. He's elected governor of the state of New York. Write that down. Teddy Roosevelt is elected governor of the state of New York as a Republican. And very soon after getting into office, he shows his interest in things like reform, regulation of businesses that maybe need a little bit of regulation in the area of treatment of workers and, you know, health and safety kinds of things, and not being too powerful, stuff like that. And some of those businesses in New York, because there's a lot of businesses in New York, they're like, we don't like Teddy. What the heck? You call yourself a Republican? They call him, literally, write this down, they called him that damned cowboy. They did. They called him that. They didn't like him. They're like, what the heck? No, they were mad. And so here's how they got it solved. They're like, okay, so we got state government coming onto our case now with Teddy Roosevelt at the forefront. Can we, like, get Teddy off the scene? They came up with a very interesting idea. And here was their idea, and they thought it was going to work. They're like, we're going to promote him to a national position where he won't be able to cause any problems for businesses in New York or anywhere. It backfires tremendously. You can see where this is going. So they talked to McKinley, and McKinley's like, sure, I'll make him my vice presidential running mate. Does that help McKinley to get reelected, to have like a war hero as his running mate? Sure. Does it look like Roosevelt's going to have any power as vice president? No. You get to break tie votes, and that's not going to happen too often because in those days, the Republicans were in a pretty strong position. But, you know, I mean, even in a close thing, it's like every once in a while. So there you go. They put Teddy Roosevelt out of the governorship of New York and into the position of vice president. You understand how that worked? Because they figure he could do no more harm. How long is that going to last as vice president?
5 seconds.
Yeah, I don't have the date on that exactly, but I want to say it's early in 1901. Like very early in the 4-year term that McKinley had. He's assassinated. He's assassinated by an anarchist. Danton, what do anarchists want? Yeah, basically they want to overthrow the government. I mean, it's like, what would be, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. But nevertheless, and here's an interesting thing. It's like, could anyone who wanted to actually, like, dispatch any of the Chinese communist leaders today, could they get close enough? No. And here's the thing. I'm looking at this going, just as an aside, what the heck are you doing, United States government? You've got, look at this, McKinley, shot and killed. President number 25. Let's back it up. President number 20, Garfield, shot and killed. Abraham Lincoln, president number 16, shot and killed. Attending theater. Can we get some security for our presidents of the United States? There's bad people out there. I mean, were there people who were in danger to the president who won the Civil War? Yeah, disgruntled Confederates, you know, who are actors who like to shoot, you know, anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, Garfield got, you know, killed by a disgruntled, like, person who's like, you should have given me a job because I helped you get elected. Really? You helped Garfield get elected? I don't think so. But, I mean, he got close enough to shoot him. And, I mean, McKinley was shot at point-blank range. Actually, there was one other guy who was shot. He was running for president, and he was shot. He wasn't killed. It was Teddy Roosevelt. He was shot. He had a speech in his pocket. The bullet went through the speech, got a little blood-stained, and Teddy Roosevelt gave that speech. He pulled out his bullet-holed, blood-stained thing, gave the speech. I mean, this guy's like, oh, yeah. I don't know. You know, he was on a roll. And then I think maybe he got some medical attention. But actually, let me throw this out to you. When was the next time we actually had a president, granted with better security, but apparently not enough security, that got shot and killed? Anybody know? It's going to be Kennedy, yeah. And he's going to be in an open car, driving through on a street in an urban area with tall buildings, one of which contained a sniper who didn't like him, Lee Harvey Oswald, who took him out in 1963. As far as, like, so presidential security, can you get close enough to our recent presidents? No. The last time we actually had one shot that was in danger was Ronald Reagan, and here was the deal. The guy that wanted to shoot him to impress Jodie Foster the actress, what the heck? He read in the newspaper the president's schedule. They used to print the president's schedule. It's like he's going to be here, and then here, and then here. And so this guy hung out at the hotel where President Reagan was giving a speech. And so Reagan came out with his security, but this guy was there, and he pulled up a gun and shot him and nearly killed him. So anyway, just as an aside, yes? Not good enough. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, so if you know where to stand, right? I mean, John Wilkes Booth. Well, I mean, that's a problem. You do need to make sure that.
Why would you hate a president so much? You're just like, I'm going to die. I'm going to shoot the president.
People do strange things for very strange reasons. Gerald Ford was only president for a short period of time. He had 2 assassination attempts against him, both from like the Charles Manson family that were like, they were all together on a different wavelength. And they were both trying to sort of do the will of Charles Manson, who I believe at that time was in prison. And so they're like, hey, we're going to do this. And actually I remember going to the Gerald Ford Presidential Museum and reading a letter from one of the women who like tried to shoot President Ford and kill him. It was sort of like nothing personal. You know, but yeah, I have to shoot the President of the United States. I'm like, really? But yeah. I got to give credit to the curator for that museum because they had the letter, they had the gun, they had all kinds of things. It was like, whoa, this stuff helps to tell the story of this particular president's administration. Yes?
So you're telling me the president gave the speech with the hole while he was bleeding?
Teddy Roosevelt, no, not this president. McKinley was shot and killed. Yeah, this guy, this assassin finished the job. The one who tried to kill Teddy Roosevelt later on didn't succeed. I don't know how much he was bleeding, but yeah, he read the speech. He's like, oh, yeah, it's just a flesh wound. Yes, I'm getting better, you know, I'm fine, I'm all right. You know, but I mean, it fits Teddy Roosevelt's persona. I mean, that story fits, right? So here we go. Who was the next president of the United States now? 1901? Boom, Teddy. Theodore Roosevelt. His face is on Mount Rushmore. When your face gets on Mount Rushmore and you're like, this guy I need to know a little bit about. All right, so let's find out a little bit about Teddy Roosevelt. We talked about him a little bit before. Wealthy family, poor family? Wealthy family. New York, wealthy family. Really good health, poor health as a young person. Poor health. He was like asthmatic, and he worked really hard through exercise to overcome that. Spent a lot of time in the American West or not? Oh, yeah. He loves the outdoors, you know, Bronco Buster kind of a thing. When he put together his Rough Riders, he had his buddies from the East Coast, you know, all the Ivy League colleges, and he had his buddies, the cowboys, from his days out in the American West. I mean, he's got all these kind of things and so forth. Very good. I was going to ask the next question. Teddy Roosevelt is actually very popular among Republicans and Democrats in years later, which is very strange. I mean, he was a Republican. Democrats like the environmental aspect. He really expanded the public park system, national parks. Very, very involved on that. And he also supported, you know, reforms and regulations. Make a note of this. Those guys that were like, that damn cowboy, we need to get him out of the governorship of New York and put him where he can't do any harm. As vice president, they had to tangle with him now that he's president and helping to enact rules and regulations that, you know, curb the power of business to do whatever the heck it wants. Having said that, write this down. Even though Teddy Roosevelt's persona is vigorous and energetic and his public like speeches and da-da-da-da-da-da, he actually was very thoughtful and very practical. He's not like an extreme reformer. He's actually somebody that looks at the situation and is like, okay, how much can I get done? All right, I'm going to get that much done. Okay? Because, you know, he didn't want to break American business. He wanted to make it more responsible. Okay? Now, that's an important thing. What we focus on mostly in this unit is his foreign policy. We've been looking at the foreign policy and how the United States relates to various different things in the world. Here, write that phrase down, okay? This is emblematic of his foreign policy. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Okay. Can you unpack that one? Anyone want to give it a try? It's not that hard, actually. What does that mean? Think of somebody who has in your life, the ability to speak, in fact, when they speak more softly, you really pay attention because you know they've got a big stick. They've got authority. Can you think of anyone? Like, do your parents fit in that? I mean, he's like, what's the big stick? That's an easy one. First, what is the big stick for the United States of America? What? Leverage. Through what? National stuff. Really? National stuff. What kind of stuff? Thank you very much. Finally, he gets it. Write it down. The military. I know. You're trying. I'll give you that. Well done. National stuff. Don't write that down. A strong military. Yes, write that down. Okay. Strong army, strong navy. You already saw that coming because he was in favor of the Spanish-American War. He's in favor of the United States continuing to build a strong navy and so forth. And that stick, he's kind of like saying, look, hey, country, I don't need to shout at you. I just need you to do what I'm asking you to do. Because I have in my hand a fully operational Death Star, a fully operational stick. I've got the power, right? So, I mean, think of that. I don't know. Do your parents, when they get like really quiet and like so forth, some of you guys have parents that are like, when they start getting quiet and talking to you, it's like, you're like, I'm going to pay attention because they got a stick, okay? I mean, not literally, figuratively, they're going to whack you upside the head, but they've got leverage, right? They've got authority. And so Teddy Roosevelt is all about, we need to have a strong military because we've got an empire. He's in favor of the empire. We're going to do this, all right? You don't have to shout at other nations, especially the ones in Latin America, in order to get things done. Let me give you a perfect example. I mean, if you're the one that he's speaking softly to, you're like, I hate the fact that he's got leverage. Here we go. The United States wants a canal to connect the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. All right, let's get this. The United States wants a canal to connect the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Because prior to the early 1900s, if you wanted to get from one side of the United States to the other with a lot of cargo and so forth, you had to go around the southern tip of South America. A lot of the miners that came to San Francisco in the 1840s and so forth, they came around that route, right? Even after we've developed lots of railroads and so forth, it's a hassle. And if you're talking about really big things like naval vessels, it's so hard to get around. It takes so much longer. So we want to build a canal, okay? France, write this down, France had tried to build a canal across from the Atlantic to the Pacific right here in Central America. They tried, they couldn't quite pull it off. The United States wants to give it a shot too, because it really affects the United States' interests, and we're like, we can pay for it, but there's independent countries there, so we got to work with them. There were two that were in consideration. Nicaragua was one. And you're like, no, Nicaragua, it's too fat. Right? It's too much dirt you have to remove. Although there's a big lake there, so that helps part of it. So you only have to go up to the lake, and then you cross the lake, and then you have to dig the rest of the canal. By the way, for your information, there is a canal being built in Nicaragua today by the Chinese. Big wide one for big wide super tankers. They're paying most of the cost. And who's going to have priority over the use of the canal? No, he who pays for it has it, all right? So we kind of threw that one out of the thing, and we focus on Panama. Now, write this down. We're thinking of building a canal in Panama. We would like to build a canal in Panama. The French actually had tried that same location. It's going to be difficult. But first, we've got to get permission from the country that controls it. Colombia. Write that down. Colombia controls it. Panama used to be like Colombia's long extended nose, or whatever you want to say. Colombia is, the larger part of Colombia is here in South America, but it used to have control of Panama. And there were Panamanians who were trying to get independence and so forth, and Colombia was always putting it down. All right, that's an interesting side note, but here's the real fact you need to know. President Roosevelt said to the Colombians, we will pay you $10 million up front and $250,000 every subsequent year. That's the negotiation start. Colombia says, no, we want $15 million more. So what is Teddy Roosevelt going to do? Another counteroffer? No, we'll get into the details of this much more so. We support a Panamanian independence insurrection and help to make sure that that takes place. Boom. Colombia hates us, but we get what we want. I'll fill in the details of exactly how that played out. how we end up with the TR palindrome. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama. It's the same thing, front and backwards.
You know,
It is.
probably Columbia would have had a better time if they just took the Japanese.
I think so.
I just
No, I mean, I don't think they quite saw that it was going to work out that way. So anyway, we'll pick up on the Panama situation more next time.